Erica Simmons was driving home late in the evening, feeling both excited and a little exhausted. It had been her first day as the new chief of police, a role she had worked tirelessly to achieve. Dressed in a simple sweatshirt and jeans, she didn't look like someone who commanded a police precinct. That's how she wanted it tonight. Just another person driving through the city she was now responsible for protecting. Her car, an older model she loved for its reliability, rolled quietly through the streets. The neighborhood she was passing through was near her precinct, a mix of older homes and small businesses. Erica had intentionally taken this route to observe the community. She wanted to see the area from the perspective of its residents, without the formalities of her uniform or title. As she approached an intersection, the faint glow of police lights appeared in her rearview mirror. At first, she thought the patrol car would pass her, but the lights stayed behind her vehicle. A quick glance confirmed it. They were signaling for her to pull over. Confused, Erica complied, guiding her car to the curb. She rolled down her window and waited, calm but curious about what had prompted the stop. Two officers stepped out of the patrol car. One, a younger officer, approached her window, while the other stayed back, watching the scene unfold. Erica noticed their stiff postures and serious expressions. "Good evening, ma'am," the younger officer said, his tone polite but firm. "Can I see your license and registration, please?" "Of course, officer," Erica replied calmly, reaching into her bag for her wallet. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" The officer hesitated for a moment. "There's been some suspicious activity reported in this area. Just doing routine checks." Erica handed over her documents, her movements measured and composed. "I see. Well, I hope everything is okay." The officer glanced at her license but didn't seem to recognize her name. "Where are you coming from tonight?" he asked, his tone still professional but slightly probing. "Just heading home after work," Erica said simply, her voice steady. She watched his reaction carefully, wondering if he'd put the pieces together. So far, it seemed he hadn't. Behind him, the second officer walked closer, his expression more skeptical. "What's your business in this neighborhood?" he asked bluntly, his eyes scanning her car as though looking for something out of place. Erica kept her composure, though the question struck her as unnecessary. "I'm just passing through," she said, maintaining a polite tone. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" The younger officer glanced at his partner, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "We're just checking, ma'am," he said. "You can't be too careful these days." Erica nodded but said nothing further. She wasn't here to escalate the situation, just to observe and see where this encounter would lead. Little did the officers know, the woman they had stopped was about to play a much larger role in their lives than they could have ever imagined. The young officer studied Erica's license again, clearly trying to make sense of the situation. "Miss Simmons," he said slowly, "your address shows you live across town. What brings you through here tonight?" Erica kept her voice calm, her hands resting visibly on the steering wheel. "I've been exploring the neighborhoods near my workplace," she said. "I like to know the areas I'll be spending time in." The officer raised an eyebrow, but didn't press further. Behind him, the second officer seemed less patient. He leaned forward, peering into the car. "We've had reports of break-ins around here," he said, his tone more direct. "You sure you're not lost or looking for something?" Erica met his gaze without flinching. "I'm sure, officer. I'm just on my way home." The second officer crossed his arms, clearly unconvinced. "It's a bit late for a casual drive, don't you think?" Before Erica could respond, the first officer interrupted, holding up her license and registration. "Everything seems fine here," he said, glancing at his partner. "Maybe we should let her be on her way." But the second officer hesitated, his skepticism lingering. "Let's run her plates," he said, turning toward their patrol car. "Just to be sure." Erica watched as the second officer walked away, his actions feeling unnecessary but not unexpected. She understood what was happening. She had seen it before. Her car, her casual attire, and her presence in this neighborhood at this hour had triggered assumptions. She remained calm, knowing she had nothing to hide. The younger officer, still standing by her window, seemed uneasy. He cleared his throat. "You said you're new to the area?" he asked, as if trying to make conversation. "In a way," Erica replied, a small smile forming on her lips. "I've recently taken on a new role here. I thought it was important to get familiar with the community." The officer nodded, though he still didn't seem to make the connection. "That's thoughtful," he said, his tone softening slightly. "Not everyone takes the time to do that." As the second officer returned from the patrol car, he shook his head. "Plates are clean," he said curtly, handing the clipboard back to his partner. "You're good to go." Erica accepted her documents with a polite nod. "Thank you, officers," she said. "I appreciate your diligence." The second officer didn't respond, already turning back toward their car, but the younger officer hesitated. "Have a safe night," he said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Erica smiled gently. "You too." As she pulled back onto the road, she couldn't help but reflect on the encounter. It had been polite on the surface, but the underlying tone of suspicion was unmistakable. She wasn't angry. She was thoughtful. Tomorrow, she'd walk into that precinct as their new chief. And when she did, these two officers would realize the lesson this moment had carried with it. The next morning, Erica Simmons woke up early, ready for her first full day as the new chief of police. As she put on her uniform, she thought about the previous night's encounter. It wasn't the first time she'd been judged by appearances, but it was a stark reminder of why she had taken this role. She wanted to lead a department that treated everyone fairly and with respect, no matter who they were or where they came from. Driving to the precinct, Erica felt a mixture of excitement and determination. She parked her car in the lot and stepped out, the badge on her chest catching the sunlight. Officers milling around glanced her way, some nodding politely, others looking curious. News of a new chief had spread quickly, but many hadn't yet met her in person. As Erica walked through the station doors, she was greeted by a mix of welcoming smiles and respectful nods. The energy in the precinct was buzzing as officers prepared for their morning briefings. Erica made her way to the conference room, where she would introduce herself to the team. Inside, a group of officers was already gathered, chatting among themselves. Erica immediately recognized the two officers from the previous night. The younger one, Officer Daniels, was leaning over the table, talking to his partner, Officer Miller, who stood with his arms crossed. Neither of them seemed to notice her as she entered. The room quieted as someone called out, "Attention." All eyes turned toward Erica. Daniels and Miller froze, their faces shifting from casual confidence to stunned realization. "Good morning, everyone," Erica began, her voice steady and authoritative. "I'm Chief Erica Simmons. It's an honor to lead this department, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you." She scanned the room, her eyes briefly meeting those of Daniels and Miller. Both officers looked visibly uncomfortable, but maintained their composure. Erica continued, addressing the entire team. "I want to start by saying that my priority as your chief is to ensure this department upholds the highest standards of integrity, respect, and service to our community," she said. "Every interaction matters, whether it's with each other or with the people we serve. We're here to protect and build trust, not erode it." The officers nodded, some murmuring their agreement. Erica's tone was firm but inspiring, setting the tone for what she expected. After the briefing, as the officers filed out of the room, Daniels and Miller lingered behind. Erica approached them, her expression calm but serious. "Officers," she said, nodding at each of them. "Good to see you both again." Daniel's face turned pale, and Miller stiffened. "Ma'am," Daniel stammered, "we didn't realize." Erica raised a hand to stop him. "I know you didn't," she said gently. "That's exactly the point. We'll talk more later. But for now, I want you both to think about last night and what it says about how we interact with the people we serve." She walked away, leaving the two officers standing there, exchanging nervous glances. Erica knew this was just the beginning. Her role wasn't just about leading. It was about changing a culture, one conversation at a time. The precinct buzzed with activity as Erica settled into her new office. From her desk, she could see the steady stream of officers passing by, some looking her way with curiosity or quiet respect. It was her second day as the new chief, and she knew that the first impressions she made would set the tone for her leadership. Erica was ready for the challenge. After going over the morning reports, Erica decided it was time to address the encounter from the previous night. She believed in accountability, not just for the department, but for herself and her officers. She called for Officers Daniels and Miller to meet her in her office. When they arrived, both looked a little nervous. Daniels fidgeted with his hands, while Miller kept his posture stiff, his face unreadable. Erica gestured for them to take a seat. "Good morning," she began, her tone calm but firm. "Thank you for coming in. I wanted to have a follow-up conversation about what happened last night." Daniels cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we didn't know it was you," he said quickly, as though trying to defend himself. Erica raised a hand, stopping him gently. "I understand that, Officer Daniels, but that's exactly what I want to talk about. The fact that you didn't know who I was shouldn't matter. What matters is how you approached the situation." Miller, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "We were just doing our job, Chief," he said, his voice steady. "There have been break-ins in that area, and we were being cautious." "I understand the need for caution," Erica replied. "But let me ask you this. Did anything about my behavior or appearance last night suggest I was involved in criminal activity?" Miller hesitated, his expression faltering. "No, ma'am," he admitted. "Then why was I treated with suspicion?" Erica asked, her tone even but pointed. "This isn't about me personally. It's about how we, as officers, interact with the community. Every stop, every conversation, builds or breaks trust. What happened last night wasn't the worst interaction someone could have, but it wasn't the best either. And we should always aim for the best." Daniels looked down, clearly reflecting on her words. "You're right, Chief," he said quietly. "I didn't think about it that way." Erica nodded. "I appreciate your honesty. This isn't about punishment. It's about learning. I want both of you to think about how we can do better. I'm implementing a department-wide review of our traffic stop procedures, as well as additional training on implicit bias and communication. I expect both of you to be leaders in this process." Miller and Daniels exchanged glances before nodding. "Understood, Chief," Miller said. "Good," Erica said, her expression softening slightly. "We're a team here, and I want us to succeed together. Let's make sure every interaction we have with the public reflects the values we stand for." As the officers left her office, Erica felt a sense of satisfaction. The conversation had been direct but constructive, setting a clear standard for what she expected. She knew this was just one small step in a larger journey, but it was an important one. Change didn't happen overnight, but it started with moments like these. Moments where lessons were learned and mindsets began to shift. The precinct was quieter than usual that afternoon, giving Erica a chance to think about how to turn the lessons from last night into meaningful change. She sat in her office, reviewing notes on departmental policies and recent community feedback. The conversation with Officers Daniels and Miller still lingered in her mind. They weren't bad officers, just products of a system that needed improvement. She knew she couldn't change everything overnight, but she was determined to create an environment where accountability, fairness, and trust were priorities. Later that day, Erica decided to address the entire department. She called for a team meeting in the briefing room. Officers and staff members filed in, curious about what their new chief had to say. Some looked eager, others skeptical, but all were paying attention. Standing at the front of the room, Erica began. "Thank you all for taking the time to meet today. I wanted to share some thoughts as we move forward together. As your chief, my goal is not just to lead this department, but to help us become the kind of team that this community can trust and respect." She paused, scanning the room. "I know the work we do isn't easy. We face tough decisions every day. But how we approach those decisions matters just as much as the decisions themselves. Every interaction we have with the public is an opportunity, either to build trust or to break it. And I want us to be a department that builds. A few officers nodded, and Erica continued. Last night, I had an encounter with two of our own officers while I was off duty. They didn't recognize me, which was fine. It's not about who I am. It's about how they treated me. I'm proud to say they were professional, but I also saw room for improvement. The room grew quieter as everyone listened intently. I'm not sharing this to call anyone out, but to make a point, she said. We can always do better. We owe it to ourselves, to each other, and to the people we serve to examine our actions and ask if they reflect the values we stand for. That's why I'll be implementing new training programs focused on communication, bias awareness, and community engagement. One officer raised his hand. Chief, do you think these changes will really make a difference? He asked, his tone curious rather than confrontational. Erica smiled. I do. But only if we commit to them fully. Change isn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. It starts with small steps, like reflecting on our actions, holding each other accountable, and being open to growth. It's a process, but I believe we're capable of it. The room filled with murmurs of agreement, and Erica could sense a shift in the atmosphere. She knew not everyone would embrace the changes immediately, but she was confident that her message had resonated with many. As the meeting ended, several officers approached her to express their support. Even Officers Daniels and Miller came forward, their expressions earnest. Thank you for giving us a chance to learn from this, Chief, Daniels said. Erica nodded. We all have something to learn, Daniels. That's how we grow. As she returned to her office, Erica felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to lead her team through it, one conversation and one action at a time. Together, they would build a department that truly served its community with honor and integrity. The following days at the precinct felt different. Erica's message about building trust and accountability had left an impression. Officers started discussing her words among themselves, some sharing their own experiences of moments they might have handled differently. Erica noticed the subtle but important shift. She wasn't just a figurehead. They were beginning to see her as someone who truly cared about their growth and the community they served. One afternoon, Erica decided to participate in one of the department's patrol briefings. She wanted to get a first-hand look at how her team prepared for their daily responsibilities and to listen to their concerns. As she entered the room, conversations quieted, and all eyes turned to her. Good afternoon, she greeted them warmly, her tone inviting. Mind if I join today's briefing? The sergeant leading the session nodded. Of course, Chief. We'd be glad to have you. As the briefing began, Erica listened carefully as officers discussed their patrol areas, recent incidents, and any potential challenges they might face. When the topic of community relations came up, Erica noticed some hesitation in the room. She decided to step in. I want to take a moment to talk about community engagement, she said. I know it's not always easy to connect with people during your day-to-day duties, but sometimes, even small gestures can make a big difference. One officer raised his hand. Chief, sometimes it feels like no matter what we do, people assume the worst about us, he said. How do we change that? Erica nodded, appreciating his honesty. That's a valid concern, and I know it can be frustrating, she replied. But trust is built over time, not in a single moment. It's about consistency. If we approach every interaction with respect and empathy, even when it's challenging, we start to shift perceptions. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Another officer, a veteran of the force, spoke up. I've been on the job for 20 years, and I'll admit, I've seen how much things have changed. But I've also seen how taking the time to talk to people, even just saying hello, can turn a tense situation into a positive one. Erica smiled. Exactly. It's about being approachable. When people see us as human beings, not just badges, they're more likely to trust us. and trust is the foundation of everything we do. After the briefing, Erica joined two officers on a ride-along through a busy neighborhood. She watched as they interacted with residents, stopping to chat with shopkeepers and listen to concerns. One moment stood out, when a young boy ran up to the patrol car, waving excitedly. Instead of brushing him off, one of the officers stepped out and spent a few minutes talking to him, even letting him sit in the car for a photo. As they drove away, Erica said, "That's what I mean. Those small moments can leave a lasting impact." The officer grinned. "Feels good to make someone's day, Chief." By the end of the shift, Erica felt a renewed sense of optimism. Change was happening, not through grand gestures, but through these everyday actions that showed the community they cared. It was a reminder that progress came from the ground up, one step at a time. As the weeks passed, Erica began to see the results of her efforts. The precinct was slowly transforming, not just in procedures, but in mindset. Officers were beginning to take more time with their interactions, thinking about how they approached people and the impact they left behind. The community, too, seemed to notice. Complaints had decreased, and positive feedback was trickling in. One day, Erica received an invitation to attend a community event in one of the neighborhoods served by the precinct. It was a small festival hosted by local businesses and residents, meant to bring people together and celebrate the diversity of the area. Erica saw it as the perfect opportunity for the department to engage with the community on a more personal level. She encouraged her officers to attend, emphasizing that their presence wasn't about enforcing rules but about building relationships. Many of them agreed, some a bit hesitant at first, but they trusted Erica's vision. When the day of the festival arrived, Erica showed up early, dressed casually but with her badge visible. The event was lively, with colorful decorations, food stalls, and children running around excitedly. Erica greeted the residents warmly, shaking hands and engaging in friendly conversations. Soon, the officers began to arrive, and their presence immediately drew attention. At first, some residents seemed cautious, unsure of why the police were there. But Erica led by example, introducing the officers to the crowd and encouraging them to join in the festivities. One moment stood out when Officer Daniels, the younger of the two officers from her initial traffic stop, joined a group of kids playing basketball. At first, he seemed out of place, but as he started to play, the kids cheered him on, laughing and high-fiving him. The sight drew smiles from nearby parents, who began to approach the other officers, engaging them in conversation. Officer Miller, who had been more reserved, found himself talking to an elderly woman running a food stall. She shared stories about her family and how long she had lived in the neighborhood. Miller listened intently, nodding and even cracking a smile when she joked about her cooking being the best in the city. As the day went on, the barriers between the officers and the community seemed to dissolve. Residents were laughing, talking, and even taking photos with the officers. Erica stood back for a moment, watching it all unfold. This was exactly what she had envisioned, a department that wasn't just seen as an authority figure, but as a trusted part of the community. Later in the day, a young woman approached Erica. "Chief Simmons, I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "We've never seen the police engage with us like this before. It means a lot." Erica smiled warmly. "Thank you for saying that. It's a team effort, and we're committed to continuing this." By the end of the festival, the officers left with smiles on their faces, many of them expressing how meaningful the experience had been. Erica drove home that evening feeling a deep sense of pride. The road to change was long, but today had been a step forward. It was a reminder that real progress came from connection, understanding, and showing up, not just in uniform, but as people. The festival had been a turning point, not just for Erica's department, but for the entire community. In the weeks that followed, Erica received messages from residents expressing their gratitude. Many spoke about how the presence of the police at the event had changed their perception, making them feel seen and respected for the first time in years. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, a foundation for something better. At the precinct, the atmosphere had shifted. Officers who were once skeptical of Erica's methods now spoke openly about the positive responses they were getting from the community. Morale was improving, and the team was beginning to see the value in fostering trust rather than fear. One morning, Erica called a department-wide meeting. She stood at the front of the room, looking out at her team. There was a sense of pride and unity in the air that hadn't been there when she first arrived. "I want to thank all of you," Erica began, her voice strong but warm. "The work we've done over the past few months has not been easy, but it's making a difference. We've started rebuilding trust with the community, and that's because of your willingness to adapt and grow." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But I also want to remind you that this is just the beginning. Building trust isn't a one-time effort. It's something we have to commit to every single day. We've seen what happens when we approach our work with empathy and respect, and I want that to be the standard we hold ourselves to." The room erupted in applause, and Erica smiled, feeling the genuine support of her team. After the meeting, several officers approached her to share their experiences. Officer Daniels, who had been so hesitant at first, spoke with newfound confidence. "Chief, I used to think community engagement was just extra work," he admitted. "But after the festival and everything we've been doing, I get it now. People don't just see us as cops. They see us as people. And that makes all the difference." Erica nodded. "I'm proud of you, Daniels. Keep building those connections. They matter." Officer Miller also approached her, his demeanor softer than she had ever seen. "You were right, Chief," he said. "It's not about being tough all the time. Sometimes it's about listening. I've started doing that more, and it's changed the way I see this job." As the day went on, Erica reflected on how far they had come. She knew there was still work to do. Systemic change didn't happen overnight, but the small victories, like seeing her officers embrace a new way of thinking and hearing the gratitude from the community, reminded her that the effort was worth it. That evening, as Erica drove through the same neighborhood where she had been stopped on her first night, she noticed a group of kids playing basketball. Among them was Officer Daniels, laughing as he joined their game. A few parents stood nearby, chatting with another officer who had stopped to check in. The scene brought a smile to Erica's face. She parked her car and stepped out, walking over to say hello. The kids waved excitedly, and the parents greeted her warmly. This was the kind of connection she had always envisioned, officers and residents standing side by side, not divided by suspicion, but united by mutual respect. As the sun set, Erica knew that her journey as chief was far from over. But for now, she allowed herself to feel proud of what they had achieved. Together, they were proving that change was possible, one step at a time. And for Erica, that was just the beginning of something even greater.